Hi, thank you so much for joining us for Devotionables, brief devotions for busy people. My name is Gabriel Heinerman. I'm one of the pastors at Ninth and O Baptist Church. We're so thankful you're taking some time out of your day to spend it with us and with the Lord in His Word. We're going to look at 2 Samuel chapter 7 today. It's one of the most important chapters in the entire Bible. In this chapter, we see that God makes a precious promise to King David. It's a covenant. A lot of people know this chapter as the Davidic covenant. God has, at this point, already made 3 previous covenants. He made one with Noah. He made one with Abraham. We saw at Mount Sinai, He makes a covenant with His people Israel. And here, He's going to elaborate further on some of these promises. He's going to give a promise to King David. But what does a promise to a Jewish king millennia ago have to do with you and me today? Well, let's look and see what God promised David and how that impacts our lives today and tomorrow. Well, a couple things I want us to notice is that God, He promises to give King David rest from all his enemies. And the chapter starts out this way. It says, now when the Lord had given David rest from his enemies. And remember, the enemies, the first that he had was King Saul and Saul's son, Ishbosheth, who they had pushed forward as the king after David, or after Saul rather, even though God said that David was going to be king. And also the Philistines. There's these battles and the wars with the Philistines, and God at this point had given David rest. And in this rest, it leads David to have a moment of reflection. The ark of God has just been brought back in. He brings it to Jerusalem finally. And here David is in his house, in his palace. He says, how can I be at rest in my home when the ark of God stays in a tent? And so he wants to make the Lord a house, right? The ark a house. And Nathan says, go, do all that's in your heart. But overnight, the Lord speaks to Nathan and says, no, go say this to my servant David. Remind him, hey, you were a shepherd boy. Now I've made you prince over all of Egypt. I've never asked for a house. Am I going about walking with Israel? I never once asked for a house of cedar. I will make you a house, right? And so he promises David that he will have rest from his enemies. And ultimately, our rest is found in Jesus Christ. We no longer have to work and strive to try to attain our way to God. In fact, we cannot. Jesus has come and done what you and I could not do. And so we rest in Him, and we strive, and we look forward to the day when His rule and reign will come on this earth, and the new heavens and new earth, and we will rest from our labors, and we will enter the rest of the Lord. Secondly, God promises David a kingdom that will last forever. The kingdom was taken away from Saul, you remember. And He promises to give David an eternal kingdom. And that kingdom began to usher in when Jesus came. And Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And we've talked about that before in our devotionables. But, there's this idea that the kingdom is now. It's already here. We can participate. We live in it. We, as God's people, we live under His rule and reign, and we try to get that out to the nations. But also a day is coming when the King will return to establish His kingdom forever, and it will never be taken away. The gates cannot be shaken. It is a stronghold for all eternity. And finally, God promises a son, a king. And this is, eventually we see that Solomon will take over, and then the line will never leave David. This is the line of Judah prophesied in Genesis 49:10. The scepter would never leave Judah. And we see in the person of Jesus Christ as He comes that He is the eternal King, the eternal Son, and all of God's promises are yes and amen in Jesus. So that's how we can relate and we can participate in these promises given to David. We can have rest. We are part of God's kingdom, which lasts forever, and we serve His beloved Son, who is our King. Be blessed today.